So y'all ready to hear about Prince? Check out this little tidbit I'm gonna give you before we get into the actual content. Mark Brown, who played bass in The Revolution, told me about his first rehearsal with the band. Brown wasn't playing the way Prince liked, so Prince went around behind him and literally kicked him in his ass very hard while wearing heeled boots. I'll be back. Hey folks, welcome back, and new listeners, welcome, and thank you for showing up and chill and listen to this. I'm tripping off of why nobody's talking about this. This article, the main article I'm going to read, came out in September last year. The first article I'm going to read before the main article came out in 2018. I read it when it came out and it flipped my wig. But yeah, it's amazing what people will do for money and fame, or what people will subject themselves to when it comes to money and fame. Ain't no one in the world you gonna come kick me in the crack of my butt, and that's that. Like, you just gonna kick me and walk away? And listen to how I feel with his mom. The band member who Prince did this to, his mom was his manager. Listen to what she said to him when he went home and told her what Prince did. She said, he's trying to break you. He's trying to break your pride, or he's just trying to break you down to get you to play the best way that you can play. And if you fight him, you'll lose. I'm thinking she was speaking as a manager, like, listen, take it, because this is how we gonna get paid. Because ain't no one in the world you gonna sit there and justify somebody literally kicking someone just because they wasn't playing an instrument correctly. That's abuse. And like I said, people will take anything when it comes to money. That's so sad. But let's get on with this. I wanted to share a little personal story before I go into these articles. It's in relation to Prince. So, no, I'm not a Prince hater. I never was. I used to tell my sister all the time that I think he does music for himself. Like, you know, he'll sit down and create some music that he likes to hear. He doesn't care if you like to hear it. It was always for himself. Okay. I was a Prince fan, and I use that word loosely, fan, because I am not a fan of any man or woman, for real. I don't do fan things, especially after the Purple Rain movie. I'm like, who wasn't into Prince? Maybe, my mother, but let's carry on. Purple Rain was cracking. I probably thought I was in love with a stranger, but yeah. But real talk, I believe my fascination with Prince grew more because of the people that I was around, the individuals I hung out to. I shall not name. One of the ladies that we hung out with, we went to elementary school with her, and then another young lady that we met through her, they met each other, I think, in junior high. And they were like complete, true, deep Prince head fans. Everything Prince is what they were about. So we even traveled on a bus from LA to the Valley to look at this guy. I think it was a high school friend of theirs, or ex-high school friend of theirs, who was doing a Prince impersonation. He was cool, but he wasn't Prince. So later in life, one of the young ladies told me that she wasn't into Prince like that anymore. She says she ran into him. I don't remember where she ran into him. I don't know if it was a concert, an event. I don't know, because she would always be in positions where, in her profession, she would always run into celebrities. And then she has that kind of personality where you would enjoy talking to her regardless of your background. I don't remember where she ran into him, but she said he was so high, he was high as a kite, and she was thoroughly turned off. And that instantly ended her long love affair with the man. Yep. I don't know who's familiar with the Right On magazine, but they were published in the 80s. They used to have these poster-sized pics of various celebrities. That was one of the main reasons I got the magazine, was for their posters. I don't know if I paid for the mags or I gave myself my own discount. But anyway, I had a few pics of Prince on my wall, among other celebrities like Tamek. Was it Tamek or Tamek? Sorry if I'm saying the name wrong. But the guy from The Last Dragon, I thought he was super fine. But anyway, my mother didn't like Prince. And I don't think she said anything did she say anything to me about putting posters on my wall? If she did, I still did it. So I don't think she came with the heat, don't put them up there, but she didn't like it. So one day we were gone. Me and my sister were going off somewhere, probably in them streets, but not like that. We was just hanging out, chilling at someone's house, or went somewhere having fun. We had the clean fun that didn't consist of our parents getting calls from the police come pick up your badass kids. We wasn't doing things like that, to get in trouble like that. My mother says she went into our room for something. I don't remember what she went in there for, but she was led to sit on my bed, lay on my bed. It was something she did that wasn't usual. It was unusual what she told me she did. And she said when she laid down on my bed or sat on my bed, she started having these perverted thoughts and seeing graphic sexual images. She said she started praying. She got up, went and got some oil, put it on the posters, mainly the Prince posters. And a day or so later, I removed the posters from my wall. I think I ripped them down from my wall. And I didn't find out till later, of course, that she prayed against whatever demonic anointing those posters had. At the time that she told me, I believe I had I had the nerve to be a little upset about it. But today I am so thankful, for real, that God blessed me with a praying mother. I was saved from I was saved from a lot of wild things because of her praying or her prayers, for real. So first, let's get into the article that I said I found or read in 2018. And it flipped my wig. I was like, what in the Sam Hill is going on? So, May the 2nd, 2016, around 2 weeks, this is the article starting. And May the 2nd, 2016, around 2 weeks after his death, they were talking about Prince, Sinead O'Connor did a strange and shocking interview where she talked about some things regarding Prince. O'Connor claimed in the interview that Prince used drugs regularly and was violent with women who were close to him. She also made bizarre allegations such as that the late musical legend was into some devil worship and that he could have Ish flying around the room from one end of the room to another. The Irish singer-songwriter who famously covered Prince's Nothing Compares to You in 1990 said in a segment of the interview published by The Blast that Prince used hard rugs commonly. I know this because I spent time with him, she said. She added that Prince once told her that his decision not to release the Black album in 1987 had to do with the fact that he was using drugs while making it. I never saw him actually take them, she continued. He would return to another room to take whatever the drugs were. And when he would come out of the room, he would be very violent, very aggressive. His eyeballs would disappear literally from his eyes. They vanished. I wonder what she meant. I wonder what she meant by they vanished. Were they two holes in his eyes? Or does she mean the iris was gone? Oh, okay. I wish they explained a little bit more. Okay. Another point O'Connor told the interviewer that Arsenio Hall is a person you should speak to. That is a person who would go and get things for Prince. Shortly after Prince's death, O'Connor also made a public Facebook post suggesting that Hall provided Prince with drugs, prompting Hall to file a $5 million defamation lawsuit against her. Hall later dropped the suit after O'Connor apologized and retracted her statement about him. You know why I think they dropped it, or he dropped it and she apologized? Because for one, if she didn't have proof that he supplied rugs to Prince, that would be defamation. But if she did have proof, and he knows that if they went to court, all of it would come out, you know? So, yeah, whatever. So, let's continue. In the police interview, O'Connor also seemed to accuse Prince of violence toward Wendy Melvin, who played guitar in his backing band, The Revolution. He had 2 women in the band, Wendy and Lisa, she said. Wendy was in the hospital for 6 weeks after he beat the ish out of her. In a different clip published by TMZ, O'Connor said that Prince tried to beat the ish out of me. I managed to escape his house. He had me locked in the house, ready to beat the ish out of me because he had gone upstairs and taken some kind of weird rug. When he came back down, he was very violent and the eyeballs are disappearing and I'm scared ishless. O'Connor discussed devil worship at the end of the clip published by The Blast. There are other women I suggest you track them down to discuss the rugs. They will also know. These are girlfriends. I've lost contact with these women myself, but over the years I've been speaking and they're telling me that Prince was a guy who was into some devil worship. I know this sounds mental, but it's not, because there are people who are into it. I've been in his house. I know what he's into. He was into some devil business. These girls who he's gone out with not only stated he was violent, but the man was able to have ish flying around a room. The man could make something fly from one end of the room to the other, all right? It's not just rugs. He's into its darkness, is what I'm trying to tell you. On May the 15th, shortly after Carver County Sheriff's Office interview, O'Connor was listed as a missing endangered person after she did not return from a bicycle ride she'd taken in the Chicago suburbs of Wilmette, where she was staying at the time, and a caller to the police expressed concern for her well-being. O'Connor was reported found a day later. Like, where you go, girl? Was you nervous and hiding out, or you just was you taking rugs, you know? But I'm not saying I was just being a little facetious, but I'm not saying I don't believe her. Because Prince, even though I liked him, and like I said, I feel like he did his music for himself to sit back and just, you know, do whatever it is he does in private and play his music just for himself. But real talk, Prince seemed to have this like air of jerkishness about himself, like he could be a real a-hole, you know, at the drop of a dime. That's what he gave off sometime. Between those, or behind that that brilliant smile of his is like, But you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna play the clip, a little clip of Sinead O'Connor talking to telling her, you know, her experience with Prince on with TMZ. Check this out.
Everyone is mistaken who believes that he did not have a drug habit for the entire of his life. He used hard drugs commonly. Okay? I know this because I spent time with the man. He did not release an album famously, which is called the Black Album. The reason he didn't, he told me himself, was that he had been taking so many dark drugs that he had had a vision from God, and God had told him the album was evil and he was not to release it. Okay? When he would come out of the room, he would be very violent, very aggressive. His eyeballs would disappear literally from his eyes as if they vanished. He had been very violent, and these women will be coming forward over time. He had been extremely violent to a number of women in his life, including myself. Several women were put in hospital. while poor Prince was under the effects of these medications. He tried to beat the shit out of me. Only I had to escape out of his house in the middle of the night. I managed to escape out of his house. He had me locked in the house ready to beat the shit out of me because he had gone upstairs and taken some kind of weird drug. When he came back down, he's very violent and the eyeballs are disappearing and I'm scared shitless.
Okay, now to further support her claims, O'Connor's claims of what she witnessed Prince doing and what he tried to do to her, let's check out this clip that I found on this YouTube channel called Life Lurker. And yeah, you guys can check her. You know, she has two videos on Denice Matthews, aka Vanity. You guys should really check that out. But listen to this, and then we're going to get into the main article.
Even as Prince seemed completely infatuated with her, she'd soon learn his dark sides, and quickly, starting off with his apparent mental manipulations. After all that hot lovemaking they'd done, at his next concert, Prince sent his bodyguard to tell Denice that she was no longer welcome, and to put her on the next plane home. Furious and not appreciating being treated like a groupie, Denice demanded to see him. This was a ploy to get her to come see him. Prince met her before going on stage and issued an ultimatum. If you really loved me, you'd come live with me in Minneapolis. Denice responded, we hardly know each other. But he countered with, well, I would like to make you a star. And if your answer is no, then I don't see why we should see each other. Denice flew to Minneapolis and quickly not only realized Prince's complex personality, but his womanizing ways. Denice recalled writing the lyrics, "Do you think I'm a nasty girl?" When she shared them with Prince over the phone, he quickly wrote them down and told her she had something special. The next day, she flew to Minneapolis, where Prince picked her up. She noted that his home was in a remote area, far from everything, and that he seemed unusually tense. She sensed something was off. As soon as they arrived at his house, before Denice could take in her surroundings or get settled, she met Susan Mancee and Susan's sister. They immediately asked who she was, and Denice introduced herself. Prince quickly excused himself, leaving the room to head downstairs to the studio, but Prince had a way of luring her back, leaving her feeling like helpless prey. Eventually, she began to push back against the manipulation and deceit. To make him jealous, she started entertaining the attention of other men. It worked every time, though she never crossed the line. Their relationship was tumultuous, marked by misunderstandings and fights, always followed by reconciliation. Denice described it as one of the strangest relationships she had ever experienced. She said Prince seemed to have 50 or 60 different personalities and could shift between them unpredictably. However, she knew him too well, so well that she could anticipate his every move. At one point, he even told her, "Stop reading my mind." He didn't like how easily she could decipher his thoughts and predict what he was going to do next. Their connection was intense, complicated, and deeply layered. Vanity 6 was officially formed, and Denice was now renamed as Vanity. Now, many people believe that it was Prince who gave her the name Vanity because he said it was like looking in the mirror, but this may in fact not be true. It's been said she already had that nickname before she ever met Prince, and for a very dark, nefarious reason. Learn what may actually be the real reason Denice got her name Vanity in this video here. Prince was extremely demanding and determined to mold the group into his vision. As a perfectionist, he set high standards and was often hard on them. The Time served as their backing band, and their weekly salary was just $275. The band members frequently complained to Prince and vented behind his back about their low pay and the pressure they were under. Vanity revealed that Prince had serious anger issues and often struggled to control his temper. She admitted she was the same way, leading to explosive arguments between them where they'd scream at each other at the top of their lungs. Prince would punish the group financially, docking $50 from their pay if they didn't follow his instructions. He even drove some of the men, like Morris Day, to tears from his harsh treatment. The members of the Time had families and children to support, but their salaries were far from enough. Vanity observed that Prince ensured he was the only one financially stable, while keeping everyone else struggling to make ends meet. She recalled a specific incident during a show when the Time was wrapping up their set. Prince and his band came out on stage and poured honey all over them. While pranks like this were common and initially seen as a joke, things escalated when the Time retaliated. During Prince's performance, they threw food at him and his band. Prince didn't find it funny. Furious, he pulled Morris Day into a back room, screamed at him, and reduced him to tears. She says that Prince always blamed him for everything as the group's leader. Vanity felt deeply sorry for Morris, noting he didn't deserve such harsh treatment. She described Prince as mean, spoiled, and prone to outbursts, always determined to have things his way. His behavior was often unfair, and he was known to tamper with their paychecks. After the incident, he docked a significant portion of the entire band's wages, leaving them even more strained financially. Over time, Vanity said she became more obedient. doing what he asked just to avoid conflict and financial penalties. Vanity revealed that Prince had no problem demeaning or humiliating people in front of others, leaving her appalled and ashamed. She felt like she was witnessing the darkest side of him. Despite this, she had fallen in love with him and wished she could hate him as much as he seemed to hate them at times. The crew had nicknames for Prince that reflected his various personalities: the Kid, the Short Cat, Napoleon, and Little Hitler. And yes, I said that name wrong on purpose because of censorship. But it seems Prince was worse than she could have ever thought. As a man, a very short man at that, he didn't mind putting hands on women in his fits of anger. Vanity recounted a particularly shocking incident where Prince beat his keyboard player Lisa Coleman so badly for calling him a pimp that she was left black and blue. And before any of you say you don't believe this, Prince's bodyguard, Big Chick, also stated that Prince beat Lisa up as well. Either way, Prince put major hands and feet on Lisa, allegedly. Vanity said he acted as though he believed he was God, displaying a dangerous God complex. Vanity said nothing was ever fair. There was no room for compromise, and they weren't even allowed to have opinions when it came to being with Prince. The groups had to fight just to get their weekly paychecks, which Vanity described as a battle. And speaking on other women who Prince had no issues putting hands on, Vanity recounted meeting Jill Jones.
Okay, now, without further ado, let's check out this New York Times. I think it was New York Times I got this from. It was published last year, 2024. Like I said, I don't understand why. I don't hear anybody talking about it. I don't know. But here it is. Dig, if you will, a small slice of Ezra Edelman's 9-hour documentary about Prince, a cursed masterpiece that the public may never be allowed to see. When you hear this, then you gonna understand why they're having issues releasing the documentary. Check it out. It's 1994, and Prince is about to release Purple Rain, the album that will make him a superstar and push pop music into distinct realms we had no idea we were ready for. The sound engineer, Peggy McCreary, one of many female engineers he worked with, describes witnessing a flash of genius during the creation of his song When Doves Cry. Over a 2-day marathon recording session, she and Prince filled the studio with sound, wailing guitars, thrumming keyboards, an overdubbed choir of harmonizing princes. It was a sort of maximalist stew possible only when someone is as Prince was, a master of just about every musical instrument ever invented. But something wasn't right. So at 5 or 6 in the morning, Prince found the solution. He started subtracting. He took out the guitar solo, he took out the keyboard, and then his boldest, most heterodox move, he took out the bass. McCreary remembers him saying with satisfaction, "Ain't nobody gonna believe I did that." He knew what he had. The song became an anthem, a platinum megahit. The next sequence starts to probe the origins of Prince's geniuses, how it grew alongside a gnawing desire for recognition. His sister, Tyka Nielsen, a woman with owlish eyes and pink and purple streaks in her hair, appears on screen. She describes the violence in their household growing up, how their musician father's face changed when he hit their mother, the ire he directed at his son, on whom he bestowed his former stage name, Prince, a gift but also a burden, a reminder that the demands of supporting his children had caused him to abandon his own musical career. Prince would risk lashing by sneaking over to the piano and plinking away at it. The son already embarked on his life's work of besting his father, the father giving and withdrawing love, the son doing the same. Cut to Jill Jones, one in a lifeline of girlfriend muses whom Prince anointed, styled, encouraged, and criticized. Hers is one of the most anguished testimonies in the film, revealing a side of Prince many of his fans would rather not see. Late one night in 1984, she and a friend visited Prince at a hotel. He started kissing a friend, and in a fit of jealousy, Jones slapped him. She says he then looked at her and said, "Itch. This ain't no expletive movie." They tussled and he began to punch her in the face over and over. She wanted to press charges, but his manager told her it would ruin his career. So she backed off. Yet for a time, she still loved him and wanted to be with him. Stayed in his orbit for many more years. Recounting the incident 3 decades later, she is still furious, still processing the stress of being involved with him. And I know she regretted not calling the police. Damn your career, you punching me in the face like I'm a man? Okay, let's go on. In the next sequence, it's the evening of the premiere of The Purple Rain, the movie which will go on to win the Academy Award for Best Original Song Score in 1985. Prince's tour manager, Alan Leeds, was with him in the back of a limo on the way to the ceremony. He remembers one of Prince's bodyguards turning to Prince and saying, "This is going to be the biggest day of your life. They say every star in town is there." And Prince clutched Lee's hands, trembling in fear. But then as Lee's tell it, some switch flipped and he caught himself. Prince's eyes turned hard. He was back in control. That was it, Lee says. But for maybe 10 seconds, he completely lost it. And I loved it because it showed he was human. In the next shot, he see Prince emerging from the limo and walking down the red carpet in an iridescent purple trench coat over a creamy ruffled collar, his black curls piled high. He swaggers, twirling a flower unbothered, a creature of regal remove. These 4 moments happen back to back. About 3 hours into the film, I watched it for the first time on a winter evening in 2023. And during this particular sequence, my body clenched as it registered contradictory intensities: amazement, pity, disgust, tenderness. Like most Americans who grew up in the 80s, I had an image of Prince emblazoned in my mind. Wonderfully strange, a gender-bending, dreamy master of funk. He flouted and floated above all categories and gave permission to generations of kids to do the same. Edelman's film deepened those impressions while at the same time removing Prince's many veils. This creature of pure sex and mischief and silky ambiguity I now saw was also dark, vindictive, and sad. This artist who liberated so many would be pathologically controlled and controlling. The film is sometimes uncomfortable to watch, but then always there is relief. The miracle of Prince's music, a release for him and a release above all for Prince. Whew, is that why he was so quiet and shy? Because he had a dark side of him? What did they say? Watch out for them quiet people? Okay, let's go on. Behold him writhing at the microphone, shrieking out the chorus of The Beautiful Ones, a song about the pain of love. Wendy Melvion, a member of his band, The Revolution, and one of the people with whom Prince was most intimate, only ever briefly tells Edelman that when he's screaming, there is a look in his eyes of pure torture. She quotes the lyrics, "Do you want him or do you want me? Because I want you." It feels like the big struggle of his entire life. Mel Vonian says, excuse me if I'm saying this last name wrong. Let's continue. "The consequence of you not choosing me is too much to bear." Yeah, when you do listen to that part, The Beautiful Ones at the end, when he's saying that, "Do you want me because I want you?" You do feel it. Like, oh my God, is he talking to me? Type thing. Okay, let's go on. The sequence I just described is 20 minutes long. Imagine sustaining this density of character analysts for 520 more, which is what Edelman has done. In the process, he offers one answer to a question that has antagonized the culture at large for the last decade. How should we think about artists whose moral failings are exposed? Edelman manages to present a deeply flawed person while still granting him his greatness and his dignity. Wesley Morris, a critic at the Times and one of a Small group of people who have seen the film told me it's one of the only works I have ever seen that approximates the experience of suffering with and suffering through and alongside genius. I've said it in multiple videos I've done that the people who become big time celebrities are the ones with the most issues. Those are the ones they choose because those are the ones they can control. Because usually the ones with the biggest issues are trying to run from something or trying to prove something, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to prove everybody wrong who doubted them, or to get everybody back who hurt them. And they end up being the worst kind of monster. Let's go on. The film took Edelman almost 5 years to finish, and it nearly broke him. Whenever he makes a documentary, he told me, it's like willingly walking into the jail or locking myself up into a box like Houdini and being like, can I get out? But he had been locked in for a long time, often working nights and weekends, chasing down subjects who seemed hunted by their friendships with Prince and researching in Prince's personal archive, which was filled with gaps. Prince kept slipping away from him. How can you tell the truth about someone who, when you're talking to people, they all had different things to say? Edelman told me. How can you tell the truth about someone who never told the truth about himself? That's true. That's a good one. Let's continue. Over a year and a half, I had observed as Edelman continued to perfect his film, working to capture the essence of Prince, even as it became slowly, painfully clear that it would most likely never air. The Prince estate had changed hands, and the new executors objected to the project. Last spring, they saw a cut and claiming that it misrepresented Prince, entered into a protracted battle with Netflix, which owns the rights to the film, to prevent its release. As of today, there is no indication that the film will ever come out. It has been like watching a monument being swallowed by the sea. I first met Edelman at his office in Brooklyn in February 2023. His films have a plain-spoken, confident erudition, and I expect the person behind the camera to be similarly poised. But I soon discovered that he has a spiky conversational style, and beneath it, a sensitive, hyper, untuned temperament. His last film, OJ, Made in America, which won the Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature in 2007, is widely regarded as one of the most ambitious documentaries ever made. Running about 8 hours, it shows how OJ's rise and fall contains the whole history of America's race pathologies. I need to check that one out. As A.O. Scott wrote in the Times, it has the grandeur and authority of the best long-form nonfiction. If it were a book, it could sit on a shelf alongside The Executioner's Story, or The Executioner's Song by Norman Mailer, and the great biographical works of Robert Caro. The project was not his idea. In fact, he was first approached about it in spring 2019 by Lisa. I'm not even going to try to, Nishimura, the vice president of independent film and documentary features at Netflix. He was doubtful. Edelman was a toast of the film world after his Oscar win for OJ Made in America. The shape of the Simpson film had formed in his mind almost instantly, in part because he could see that Simpson's story was a meeting point for two of his lifelong interests, the son of a civil rights activist, Marion White Edelman, and the progressive lawyer, Peter Edelman, who were the third interracial couple to marry in Virginia in 1968. Edelman grew up steeped in the history of the Black American struggle. He is also a sports fanatic. The Prince Project was the inverse of O.J. Simpson, was so visible, his story so raked over, and Edelman made new meaning of it. But Prince was a mystery. Despite the existence of several biographies and oral histories, there was still so much about Prince's life that was unknown. And the challenge would be to try to find out who he really was. What ultimately persuaded Edelman to take on the film was a potential treasure trove of new material. For tens of millions of dollars, according to a source familiar with the negotiation, Netflix had secured from the estate exclusive access to Prince's personal archive, referred to among Princeologists as the Vault. It had been an actual room in the basement of his fortress-like home and studio, Paisley Park, filled with unreleased recordings and concert footage and the master copies of all his music and drawings and photographs and who knew what else in life. Prince was defiantly private. He rarely sat for interviews, and when he did talk to the press, he often spoke in koans. There were so many unexplained oddities. The changing of his name to a symbol, a move that was widely mocked and that no one ever fully explained. His many battles with record companies, including the years when feuding with Warner Brothers over control of his output and his master recordings, he took to performing with the word slave written on his face. His decade of perfect albums followed by years of uneven, often impenetrable ones. There was most perplexing of all his death from a fentanyl overdose, when he always seemed to disdain drugs and alcohol. Access to the vault presented a chance to tell a more detailed story about Prince than had emerged before. I have an issue with that. I really do have an issue. I hope his people gave Netflix the authority to, to buy that or own the rights to it, because, when things like this happen and you think about the black artists, this always seems to happen to them. Somebody I was talking to pointed this out to me. You notice that black artists always seem to have a problem with their estate when they die. It's always like that. But he said you don't hear that happening to white artists. Well, I think now that I think about it, I do recall. I don't know. I got to do some research to find that out. But it's like, and then it's like they said that Prince didn't have a will. I'm like, as shady as this country is, who knows? You gonna tell me all this year you was in the entertainment field, all the things that could possibly happen, you didn't sit down and create a will? Yeah, I was talking to somebody some years ago when I was doing business with them, and they told me he does draft up a lot of nonprofits and LLCs with a lot of people, high profile people, or he does this for a lot of high profile people. And he told me honestly, he said, I'm gonna tell you the truth, a lot of the black people, like entertainment, what have you, he said they do not have wills. I said, are you serious? I thought it was just something they were saying, like, just trying to stigmatize black folks. But he said, no, it's true. They don't have wills. And I'm like, that don't make no difference. Okay, let's go on. Do you realize the chaos you put your family in when you don't take the time out to draw up a simple document like that? And then I think some black people probably don't like doing it because they feel like they're bringing a curse on their lives. Ooh, I don't want to, I'm not doing no will. But you don't even have... Okay, let's get on with it. Edelman and his team spent a full year watching tape they found in the vault. At first, they were excited about the material. Hours upon hours of band rehearsals and music videos. All of Prince's never-before-seen performances, including pristine 16mm film from his tour for the 1981 album Controversy, and scenes from one of his final piano and microphone shows in 2016. The footage moved the film's editors to tears, but though he would make ample use of it, Edelman knew he didn't want to make a concert film. What he wanted was to tell a story of the arc of those years, of the person who resided in the gaps among Prince's many metamorphoses. But it soon became clear that there was almost nothing that was spontaneous or personal in the vault. Almost no footage of him recording or writing. At one point, they were excited to discover a few home movies and Prince horsing around with girlfriends, but when they watched the tapes, they appeared to have been deliberately damaged. One of the two main editors of the film, along with Gabrielle Rhodes, put it, the vault was not all that different from an Instagram account or a Facebook page. It was manicured, curated, just the way Prince wanted it. Damn, now that's a person with a lot of ass secrets. And the vault is where you're supposed to put things that you just, nobody can touch unless you allow them. So in your vault, you still was, oh my God. Let's go on. After a year, some of the most revealing material was scraps of unintentional candor. Moments when Prince thought a camera wasn't rolling would transition into a different person. He turned inward, look at the floor. At first, it looks like nothing, but he's just looking, quiet. But the accumulation of these moments was revelatory. Within these things, there's a lot of vulnerability. There's shyness. There's a lack of confidence that butts up against confidence in this really interesting way. What did these moments mean? They needed the people who knew Prince to tell them. That's why he acted the way he was acted. He was insecure. When people are insecure and don't have the confidence that they pretend to have, they end up being jerks. Let's go on. Edelman, with the help of the producer, carefully tried to penetrate the concentric circles around Prince. It's a complicated culture in that Prince world. People are very protective for various reasons. It's no surprise that interview subjects would be guarded about the personal life of a world-famous celebrity, but the vehemence of the refusal in some cases, combined with a sense of suspicion about their motives, was a continual source of frustration for Edelman and his team. Edelman sometimes felt as if Prince was still dictating what could and couldn't be said. What are you not telling me? He found himself wondering. What's the big secret? Rosenberg spent hours each day on the phone trying to reassure everyone. As the moments went by, the team slowly persuaded more people, former bandmates, sound engineers, assistants, bodyguards, managers, a hairstylist, girlfriends, childhood friends, record company executives, and Prince's sisters to come on camera. The story of Prince that was emerging was a story of a person bent on fame and control. What'd I say in another video I did? I said, when you run into a person who is willing to do whatever it takes to become famous, they will neglect their morals or whatever they know that's right or wrong, right? Whatever they know that's right or wrong, they're going to neglect it. And beware. Let's continue. From the very beginning, when he signed his first contract with Warner Brothers at the age of 18, he insisted on a level of independence unusual for an artist so green. When Warner Brothers suggested that Maurice White from Earth, Wind & Fire produce his debut album, Prince refused and did it himself. He became a domineering band leader, ruthlessly extracting from his musicians the sounds he was hearing in his head, often subjecting them to 10 to 12-hour days and growling in their faces about their insufficiencies. Edelman was finding that the people Prince worked with were still afraid of him, yet in many cases were also tenderly protective. As Edelman completed his interviews, more than 70 of them, he realized there wasn't some big secret that people were hiding. Instead, what he found were the defining traumas of Prince's childhood and his constant recapitulating of them. The story unfolds slowly, hauntingly over the course of the film. Prince's parents, John Nelson and Mattie Shaw, had a volatile, violent relationship. They split up when Prince was 6 or 7. His mother remarried a man named Haywood Baker. Two people in the film, a youth counselor and a childhood friend, said Prince told them that Baker locked Prince in his bedroom for a period of time. The youth counselor said it was for 6 weeks, passing food through the door. When Prince emerged, according to the counselor, his ebullience was gone. He went inside. According to the people in the film, Prince's mother kicked him out of her house when he was around 12. She sent him to live with his father, whom he idolized as a musician. But after catching Prince with a girl in his room for the third time, his father, a strict 7-day Adventist, kicked him out too. Prince was 14, and as his sister Tyka tells Edelman, it broke his heart. He stayed with various friends for many years, sleeping on a mattress in the basement of his best friend, Andre Simone. Prince had always been short and was brutally teased. By the time he reached his full adult height, 5'2", he had accepted that he wouldn't be a basketball player. Though he was a lifelong, maniacally competitive baller and developed a swagger to counteract his smallness. At 16, he was already getting a local reputation as a guitarist and songwriter in various bands, but the sense that his own parents couldn't apprehend his gifts, that they found his presence distasteful, that was a deep gnash in his psyche. Prince tells us the story himself in miniature in a song, When Doves Cry. How can you just leave me standing alone in a world that's so cold? I had always taken Prince's yeps and cries as transgressive in your face sexuality watching the film. I understood that they also carried real grief. As his fame grew, he had a troubled relationship with his family members. His mother was in and out of his life, at times asking him for money. He and his only full sibling, Tyka, who sometimes abused drugs, were estranged for periods. He would draw close to his father, buying him a house and cars, bringing him on his date to an awards show, the two men dressed in matching purple suits. He continued to hunger for his father's praise, a touching inspiration on a copy of his cosmically great album, 1999, flashes across the screen. Hi, Papa, please play Side with a star on it. It's longer and better. Love you, Prince. But John Nelson's love was inconsistent and self-aggrandizing. In the film, we see him take credit in interviews for all Prince was, even demanding a co-writing credit on some of his songs, angering Prince and leading to more years of estrangement. A byproduct of his familiar absence was Prince's constant attempts to create for himself his own stable family. He fantasized about becoming a loving husband and father, but Prince could not really attach. He turned and grew paranoid, and despite the entourages that he assembled and disassembled around himself, he was ultimately terribly alone. Several years into the interviewing, there were still crucial holdouts among those who had been closest to Prince. It wasn't until the fourth year of the project that Edelman and Rosenberg managed to persuade Wendy Melvion and Lisa Coleman, the guitarist and keyboardist from the Revolution and two of his most important collaborators, to participate. After interviewing them, Edelman breathed a sigh of relief. He had found the emotional core of the film. The period when they worked with Prince were the most joyous and fertile. He made his career-defining albums. 1999, Purple Rain, he went from being a niche act to a major rock star. His band was tight, flamboyant, and funky. An amalgam of races and genders and sexualities, revolutionary in name and sound and intent. Lisa and Wendy offered Edelman a singular perspective on Prince during the years when he was molding himself into an astronomical musical force. The women were a couple, and Melvion says in the film that Prince loved their relationship. He was really intrigued by the freedom that we felt about ourselves that gave him the strength to explore his own gender-bending sexuality. Coleman talked about applying makeup to his back acne before going on stage and expressing how alone he sometimes felt strutting around half naked. I felt his vulnerability because he was going to go out on stage and take off his coat and be sexy. Melvion describes the monumentality of his talent how he would disappear and come back with new songs in what seemed like minutes, but also the buzzing, compulsive quality of it. Music poured out of him with a geyser-like force that he couldn't turn off. No one could possibly keep up. The three of them had an almost telepathic working relationship. It felt pretty intimate. And I guess our music was the sex. For a time, Prince was able to accept their love, to build a kind of family with Melvian and Coleman and the other members of the revolution, but his pattern was to create closeness that could edge into suffocation and then subtly turn away. Ooh, I don't like people like that. That just get you emotionally attached to them and then just cut you off like, oh, let's go on. He became romantically involved with Melvian's identical twin, Susanna, who was co-lead of the family, one of the many bands he created. She also speaks insightfully in the film, describing how he could switch between doting Karen and alarming coldness. When they moved in together, she told Edelman he monitored her phone calls and discouraged her from leaving the house. He tried to prevent her from seeing Wendy, who had told Prince in essence that if he messed with Susanna, he was messing with them both. In their interviews, you can see that the two women are still working through their hurt. Yet neither can divorce herself from sympathy. He was so marginalized as a kid, Susan said. He was always trying to find his worth. Where do I belong? Who's going to accept me? Who's going to take me as I am? In these women, he had found that acceptance, collaboration, and love. It's heart-rendering to watch as he destroys it. When members of the revolution tried to negotiate their higher pay, according to Coleman, he told them that they wouldn't ask for more money if they really loved him. Jeez, wow. Whoa. Now that's world-class manipulation right there. Let's go on. A pattern in his working relationships, another person who worked for Prince told me. They threatened to leave and he told them to go ahead. In 1986, he disbanded the revolution, built a new band, and started constructing Paisley Park in a cornfield outside Minneapolis, where he would gather and disperse new casts of characters every few years. Ooh-wee. Prince was known as a boisterer of women. He had a long list of collaborators with complex, sexy, mysterious personas of their own. Prince was fascinated by femininity and often embodied it himself with his flowing locks and makeup and lacy underwear. He had an alter ego called Camille, inspired by a 19th century French intersex woman, Herculine Barbin, and whose voice he sometimes sang. He wrote about his fluidity. I'm not a woman. I'm not a man. I am something that you'll never understand. He sings in I Would Die For You. But as with so many aspects of Prince, his alignment with women contained opposing impulses, merging and control, support, and domination. Over time, Edelman and his team interviewed many of Prince's proteges from the 1980s and 90s. Jill Jones, Carmen Electra, Robin Power, Anna Fantastic, Sheila E., and others. They were muses, girlfriends, baby dolls, many of them getting involved with him as teenagers, though he was careful not to sleep with them until they turned 18, and hanging around Paisley Park for months or years. They all appear in the film and give differing accounts of their experiences. Some, like Jill Jones, describes his cruelty and diminishment of them. Others, like Electra and Fantastic, are still spellbound by their time with him and speak of how he buttressed their sense of self. Robin Power says that Prince truly thought of himself as part female. Jones explains how fiercely competitive as he was, he tried to best her at her own femininity. The result is a many-faced portrait The women emerged as variously funny, appealing, appalled, victimized, knowing. Were asked to sit with Prince's multiplying paradoxes for many hours, allowing them to unsettle one another. One of the most disturbing parts of the film depicts Prince's relationship with Mayte Garcia, who became his wife, now striking, doe-eyed 50-year-old woman in a flowing silk skirt. She describes how she met Prince when she was 16 and he was 35. After he saw tapes of her belly dancing, after 2 years of calls and visits, he invited her to dance with his band, the New Power Generation. Prince told Garcia that he idolized her virginity, and though they became a couple, they didn't have sex until she was 19. A letter that Prince wrote to her is shown on screen. "You are a child of God, an angel, and I worship you," he writes. His eye is rendered in Prince's signature style as a drawing of an eye. I've known other women all my life, and I suspect I always will. "I have a history," he went on. "One of the main reasons I love and worship you is because you don't have a history. And what's more beautiful is that you don't desire one." He ends the letter by writing over and over again, like an incantation, "I will never leave you." And that is when he started brainwashing her. Writing that over and over again, that's brainwash. Hypnosis, witchcraft is one of them. Let's go on. On their wedding night, when Garcia was 22, Prince presented her with 2 new songs, "Friend, Lover, Sister, Mother, Wife," and "Let's Have a Baby." She became pregnant not long after, much to Prince's joy. He had clouds painted all over Paisley Park, built a playground, and bought 10 speed bikes. He took Garcia's ultrasound recordings to the studio and used a heartbeat in the song "Sex in the Summer." 8 months into the pregnancy, Garcia went into labor. When their son was born, they discovered he had a disease called Pfeiffer syndrome, type 2, and was unable to breathe on his own. They jointly made the decision to take him off a respirator. In the film, Garcia slowly narrates the aftermath of the baby's death. Almost immediately, Prince was on a plane doing a show in Miami. Just days after the baby died, they shot a music video for the song "Bet You by Golly Wow," in which they embraced on a hospital bed in the same hospital where she had just given birth. A week after that, Garcia was on the floor of her room weeping when Prince walked in and announced that Oprah was due to arrive at Paisley Park that morning. She was coming to interview the couple to promote his new album, Emancipation. Garcia understood that she had to put it together, had to be his wife. Now check out this brief clip of the actual interview and look at their demeanor.
When he talks about you, there's a thing that happens in his eyes.
I do feel that I've come closer to who I aspire to be by being with her.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
And what does she do for you that you didn't have alone?
She makes it easier to talk to God.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I could cry. Was it like a traditional ceremony, like if there's a minister and
yes.
you take and you say and till death do us and the whole thing?
Mm-hmm. We had a very small wedding. We only invited friends and family, mostly family, and there was a big empty section in the church. And she said that she's glad that it was empty because they left room for the angels.
Is he romantic?
He's romantic.
Yeah. I'm thinking if he ain't romantic, who is?
You see, like, okay, well, she did say that in this article that she had been laying on the floor crying before he came in the room and said Oprah wanted to interview them or was coming to interview them. But look at the performance he gave. You wouldn't have never known that he was treated her so coldly. And here I am looking at the interview. I watched it when it came out because, anything about Prince, because he was so reclusive, or to me, he was so private. And when he gave an interview, it got your attention. And then I'm sitting there looking at him. He looked so handsome, so boyishly handsome, and just like shy, and just gave us all the dramatics. And I'm sitting there like, girl, you with Prince? Like, oh my God, like, Come to find out, this woman went through hell. All right, let's continue. In the vault, Edelman's team found footage from right before the interview began. Garcia appears in a white miniskirt and jacket. Prince criticizes her under his breath. "We can see up your dress." The interview itself, which Edelman stitches into Garcia's account of this time, is retching. Garcia settles herself in a chair next to him. At one point, Oprah turns to her and asks brightly, "What would you like to say about your relationship?" Garcia offers a wavering smile and looks pleadingly at Prince. Garcia recalls the moment for Eldon. "I could barely look at her. I just kept looking at him like, help me keep it together." Oprah inquires about the status of her pregnancy. Prince had told Garcia not to say that the baby died, so she says nothing. After an awkward beat, he answers for her, "Well, our family exists. We're just beginning it. And we've got many kids to have." This was the start of a period when Prince neglected, betrayed, and ultimately abandoned their marriage. See what he did? He told her that he would never leave her. And then look what he did. First sign of trouble, he was out. He mentally and emotionally stepped. And let's go on. But the mode of the film is not to linger judgment. It's to probe, to try to make narrative sense out of the disparitedness of Prince's personality, in part by showing how his memory lives in the people who knew him. Garcia, now a self-possessed woman who retains an air of innocence amid the wreckage of her experience, can summon affection and understanding. She herself cannot seem to condemn him. Edelman allows us to see how her own myth-making, the moments in the interview when she seems magnetized by the fantastical love story she is narrating. "It's what every woman wants to hear on her wedding night," she says, describing his singing, friend, lover, sister, mother, wife. Her eyes filling with tears. She seems as mystified as we are by the starkness of Prince's contradictions, still enthralled to his tenderness and brilliance, and invested perhaps in having been the object of his prickly admiration. Edelman presents the death of Prince's denial about the death of his baby for years. He would never acknowledge it publicly, as more evidence of his inability to show how truly vulnerable he was, a motherless, fatherless child who longed to be protected by a family of his own. As the family-making enterprise was failing, it seems he sought a different form of protection. Over the next 15 years, he adhered to a strict religious observance. Falling under the sway of an exalt father figure, the musician Larry Graham, who insinuated himself into Prince's life and instilled in him the Jehovah's Witness theology. Another seemingly inexplicable chapter in Prince's metamorphosis starts to make some kind of sense. That weird period when Prince kind of went off the deep end. The film shows how he was caught in a grief that he couldn't admit to or comprehend, trying on many new guises in an attempt to shed it. By the spring of 2023, Edelman and his team had assembled a cut of the film that was 9 hours long. And they were still obsessively editing it, still trying to calibrate Prince's many sides while also allowing the viewer to luxuriate in the utter genius of his performances. But even as they continued their work, the project was being obstructed by Prince's estate. On the many bafflements of Prince, one of the most haunting is his failure to leave a will. Prince spent years in a burning fury over Warner Brothers' ownership of his master recordings. Having them restored to him was his great crusade. 2 years before he died, a deal was finally worked out and he got his masters back. In the film, he refers to them as his children. So how could it be that he left no plan for their posterity? Was it the ultimate act of control, a reflection of his distrust of lawyers and contracts, or was it a final act of abandonment, of himself, of his own work? Yeah, that's a great question. After fighting that hard for your masters, your music, your work, your intellectual property, why didn't you leave a will? That's a great question. Let's go on. After he died, his estate, which was divided among his sister Tyka and 5 half-siblings, was plunged into chaos. It's like he lived in chaos and he left chaos. Let's go on. When Netflix negotiated a deal for the documentary, a court had placed the estate, which owned millions in back taxes, under the administration of Kemerick Bank and Trust. But in 2022, after years of legal battles, a Minnesota court divided Prince's estates between Primary Wave, a music company on whom 3 of Prince's heirs had sold their shares, and Prince Legacy LLC, composed of the other 3 heirs, and L. Lundell Macmillan, a lawyer who worked with Prince in the 90s and 2000s, and Charles Spicer, a music producer. The estate quickly moved to shut Edelman and his team out of the vault with no explanation, making it even more difficult to finish the film. Edelman started showing the film to family and friends and to some of the people who appeared in it. One day in the summer of 2023, he invited Questlove, the hip-hop artist, music historian, and Academy Award-winning filmmaker, and perhaps the world's #1 Prince fan, who served in the film as one of the chief explicitors of his musical innovation, to a day-long screening with several friends in Brooklyn. By the 4th hour when I arrived, the room had the distinctive movie theater must, popcorn and bodies stewing in emotion. Questlove, sitting in the front row in a black sweatsuit, made his pleasure and pain known. When Susanna Melvin described how Prince's personality in bed was very opposite of his stage persona, he was very controlled, very shut down. Questlove, what? Wait a minute, hold up. His personality in bed was very opposite of his stage. Okay, so you think about how he performs. Prince be wild in a very creative, very, artistic way. But then he's out. Okay, let's go on. See how they... Okay, let me just go on. Questlove bellowed in incredulous expletive when Morris Hayes, one of Prince's longtime bandmates, said he encouraged Prince to reconcile with his father. You only got one dad. Questlove snapped his fingers in agreement. You could feel the collective wonder in the room at the end of the chapter of the film when Edelman presents the story behind Prince's famous guitar solo during While My Guitar Gently Weeps on the night he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2004. One video of the performance promoted by the Hall of Fame has been viewed more than 29 million times on YouTube. After Tom Petty, Steve Winwood, Jeff Lynne, and Dhani Harrison have played through most of the reverential rendition of the song, Prince emerges from the wings in a black suit and a red bowler hat, poker face, and plays a solo of such intricacy and mournfulness that the other players shake their heads and grin with admiration. On his face is a supreme expression of Prince's superiority and bravura, but the film gives it a new context. Questlove on the screen talks about his disbelief the previous year when Rolling Stone made a list of 100 greatest guitar players of all time and Prince was left off it. Prince nursed these kinds of slights and his commandeering on the stage at an event associated with John Wayner and Rolling Stone was in part an act of revenge. There's spite and aggression in the performance, but there's also pain. In his winching face, his apartness, a small soigné black man on stage with these rumpled white rockers. Edelman juxtaposes the first moments of the solo with wisp of the past, calling back to earlier images. Here's Prince jumping up again to be seen behind his peers. Here's Prince as a baby being held by his mother, and we hear his voice saying, "I ran away when I was 12. We know from the sequence before this one that his parents had recently died. Suddenly, this triumph performance is given, this other dimension of insecurity and insistence in the face of all doubters, the White Rock establishment, his uncomprehending parents, the demons in his head. The kneeling his elects from the guitar is so plaintive, you want to weep too." A close friend of his later told me that Prince would watch this performance over and over. Prince died April 21, 2016 at age 57 of a fentanyl overdose alone in the elevator at Paisley Park. His death was presaged in the lyrics, "Let's go crazy. Tell me," he howls, "are we gonna let the elevator bring us down? Oh no, let's go crazy, let's get nuts," leaving his friends to wonder if he had somehow planned it, fulfilling his own prophecy, orchestrating his mythology until the end. In the final moments of the film, Edelman gives him to us in his glory, sitting at a piano and singing the latter, a song but also a prayer. Everybody's looking for the latter. Everybody wants salvation of the soul. When the screening ended after midnight, Questlove was shaken. Since he was 7 years old, he said, he had modeled himself on Prince. His fashion, his overflowing creativity, his musical rule breaking. So it was a heavy pill to swallow when someone that you put on a pedestal is normal. That was the bottom line for him. That Prince was both extraordinary and a regular human being who struggled with self-destructiveness and rage. Everything's here. He's a genius. He's majestical. He's sexual. He's flawed. He's trash. He's divine. Okay, he's divine. He's all those things. And man, wow. I called Questlove a few months later to see how it all settled in his mind. He said he went home that night and spoke to his therapist until 3 a.m. He cried so hard he couldn't see. Watching the film forced him to confront the consequences of putting on a mask of invincibility, a burden that he feels has been imposed on black people for generations. He ain't never lying. They can be feeling like so lowly, so insecure, so wounded behind closed doors, but when they go out in public, it's like, I will never let you see me sweat. That can cause you to build up such a barrier protection around you. It's not healthy. I was just telling a family member last night that I believe black folks in this country, those called black in this country, black Americans, they are the most messed up mentally, because this world played a psychological game on the minds of those called black people in this country for hundreds of years. Could we be seeing the repercussions of those games? Let's go on. A certain level of shield, he could call it masculinity or coolness, the idea of cool, the mere ideal of cool, was invented by black people to protect themselves in this country, he said. But we made it sexy. We could take dark emotion and make that cool too. Yeah, when a person is just super cool, trust me, that is insecurity. The night of the screening, he said he told his therapist was a wake-up call. I don't want my life to be what I just saw there. It was painful, he said, to take your hero and subject him to the one thing that he detests more than life, which is to show his heart, show his emotion. But Questlove feels the film performs a cultural service, a cracking, particularly for black men, of a facade of invincibility. No one wants to go first, he told me, but for the greater good of mankind and our evolution as human beings and wanting to be seen as human beings, he said, I saw this as a rare chance for us to look human to the world. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with a man showing when he's vulnerable. I wouldn't advise you to do it around people you don't trust. Of course not. But there's nothing wrong to show that sometimes. There's nothing wrong to let it be known that you don't know everything. That you don't feel strong all the time. You don't always have the right answers. There's nothing wrong with that. You always trying to be in control actually shows your weakness. Nobody's in control all the time. Let's go on. In the late spring of this year, the news started to percolate in Hollywood that Edelman's film might never air. The state attitude about the project seemed to be encapsulated in July 2024. In a July 2024 tweet by Charles Spicer, we have a duty to honor and protect his legacy with a story that fairly shows his complexities as well as his greatness. Our Reddit fan threads, rumors abounded that the film was salacious, a takedown. One post sent to me by a friend of Prince's told me it reflected the attitude of the estate. The documentary tears him down and then builds him up. They only do this to black heroes, where they talk about a fight with an ex from 45 years ago when they do Mick Jagger or David Bowie documentary where they talk about the drug use or grooming young women. Of course not. I can't agree with that. But I think if they were doing an expose, no, they wouldn't. They would keep all that buried. But if they're just doing just basically like the people love to say transparent, they're being transparent, which I don't even think people know what transparency is. Transparency is you putting everything on the card, the good, the bad, the ugly. And people are not being transparent like that, trust. But I think, I don't know what they would do. I would have to go and look at some documentaries about some white artists and see if they expose them like that. I think they have, though. Like, people are finally coming out talking about how nasty and brutal Elvis Presley was. So, let's go on. I discussed this argument with the writer Daniel Smith, former editor of the music magazine Vibe, the author of Shine Bright, a very personal history of black women in pop, and a contributor to this magazine. Smith has not seen the film, but she told me, I guess her name is Danielle. No, that's not. Okay, let's go on. But she told me that while she would never insist on a purely celebratory portrait of a black icon like Prince, she could understand the feelings of rage and neglect that lie behind that wish. The fact that we rarely see this anatomization of Mick Jagger or Bowie, or for that matter, Paul Simon or Paul McCartney, allows a very traditional white male masculinity to still stand there as a monument of what genius is supposed to look like, she said. She offered a comparison to George Washington, who was allowed to stand as an unquestioned national hero for centuries before anyone focused on how he stole dentures from his slaves' mouth. And that is not all they stole. Although the shareholders in the estate claim publicly to have an equal voice, several people who have dealt with them directly say that Macmillan is the dominant shaper of the strategy and decisions. He has been a lawyer in the music industry for 30 years, and he is known as a canny businessman who was instrumental in helping Prince get out of his Warner Brothers contract more than 2 decades ago. Though he and Prince were not close in the last years of his life, he is also a polarizing figure whom several people characterized to me as controlling and bullying. Jay-Z famously went after him on his album 444. I sat down with Prince eye to eye. He told me he wishes before he died. Now Lundell Macmillan, he must be colorblind. They only see green from them purple eyes. Several people I spoke to said they believe Macmillan's objections come down to a fear that the film will get Prince canceled and devalue the estate's bottom line. What I say is always about money. Always about money. They can give a rat's ass about this man. It's about, are you going to stop our change from coming in? That's all it's about. Ugh, damn. Sometimes Prince's life appeared to Edelman as a warning. At moments, he disliked him intensely, only to find himself moved by Prince's humanity. Prince's sharp angles softened somewhat as he grew older. He had taken on the mantle of elder, championed younger musicians, especially women, whose work he sometimes discovered online. On tour, he became a living, breathing archive of a century's worth of black music. He addressed politics and injustice more directly than he ever had. In the film, we see footage of a concert Prince gave in Baltimore in 2015 after the police killing of Michael Brown and the death of Freddie Gray, where he tells the grieving crowd, "I am your servant this evening. I am your housemaid, and I love each and every one of you." In the last months of his life, Prince did a series of lo-fi concerts he called his piano and microphone tour, footage from which forms the spine of the film's final hours. Prince wears a sparkling purple jumpsuit, his natural hair in a large afro, the way he wore it when he was first starting out. He sits at a piano, accompanying himself without a band, singing epic ballads like "Sometimes It Snows in April," mentioning the loss of old friends, the pain of his childhood, his loneliness. Occasionally, as Scotty Baldwin, his live sound engineer at the time, told Edelman, Prince would leave the stage to cry, drink some tea, go on again. All those years of devotion to performance seemed to have peeled something back in him. In one sequence in the film's last hour, Prince sings "Free," a song that he wrote in his 20s, addressed to someone who is having trouble facing the day. Don't sleep until the sunrise, listen to the falling rain. He sings in his caressing falsetto. Don't worry about tomorrow. Don't worry about your pain. Don't cry unless you're happy. Don't smile unless you're blue. Never let that lonely monster take control of you. It's another moment in which Edelman stitches a song together with images from earlier in Prince's life. Here he is falling to his knees during a performance, doing a victory jig in a powder blue jumpsuit on a basketball court, kissing Wendy Melvion on stage, bowing to Mayte Garcia, blowing a big pink bubble and grinning. By now we know him well, his torment, his competitiveness, his longing for communion, and his failure to achieve it. Edelman shows us how deeply all this lives inside this song. Be glad that you are free, he cries out in the chorus. Free to change your mind, free to go most anywhere, anytime. The purity and veracity that Prince reached in these late performances is contrasted with the increasing disorder of his private life. Chronic pain dogged him, decades of wild athletic performance, sequences of leaps and twirls and full splits and 4-inch high heel boots took their toll. A chorus of voices in the film, Garcia, Wendy, Melvion, Hayes, sound engineers, bodyguards, assistants, testified to his decades-long dependence on pain medication, how it warped his body and his mind, how he quit and relapsed, how it finally killed him. We see images from Paisley Park taken by investigators after Prince died. His makeup table strewn with spilled bottles, piles of food left to rot in corners, pills scattered on bedspreads, a makeshift bed on the floor of a small internal bedroom, a disturbing echo of his early trauma at the hands of his stepfather when he died on that elevator in a box within the box of Paisley Park. He was sealed in completely alone. At the end of his life, several people who knew him told me Prince was more open, more willing to acknowledge his shortcomings and share aspects of his pain. But he couldn't get all the way there. Couldn't admit the extent of his dependency on pain pills. Couldn't allow old friends to see him in his suffering. Couldn't make a plan for his legacy. Edelman's film restores to Prince some of the things he could never achieve for himself. It's an act of witness and a kind of companionment for a lonely musical genius. But through some grim cosmic poetry, it too remains locked in a vault. Woo. See, that's why I've said several times in the multiple videos, do not envy people. Rich, poor, it doesn't matter. You don't know what these people are going through in their personal lives. You don't know. You do not. You do not know. All right, folks, that's it. My voice is getting hoarse. For some reason, I didn't realize how long this article was, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. I appreciate you guys for your support. I appreciate you guys who look at the entire video, who comment, who like, who share. I really do appreciate you guys. And I'm about to shut down the shop. And I will see you guys in the next video. Have a good day.